Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Dee Dee. We are the hilarious outcome of opposing brains sharing a mutual desire to share knowledge and positive thinking about hemp and cannabis.
We are here to tear down the walls built by Big Pharma and other big companies that seek to keep the human race in fear and divided.
We are here to shatter the myths about hemp and cannabis and change the stigma of this amazing plant. Welcome to Hemp and Happiness with the Hemp Queen
And Emperor.
Podcast. Join us as we venture into this misunderstood and the unknown. Welcome back, you happy hempsters. We are on another episode today, and this one Matt's done all the research for, so yay me. Don't worry, I'll still interject my opinion as well, just like he does when I get to do my podcast. That's the fun of it. So thanks for listening to us, and make sure you follow us on all the, channels. We're on every freaking social channel there is. So follow us, leave comments, and, hopefully we can enlighten you on some all things hemp and CBD today.
We're kind of a big deal. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So you can find us anywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. You might catch me at a bus stop. You might catch me at a, social engagement. I'm everywhere. So anyway, let's dive right in. We have a very serious topic today, and it actually is very serious. But I'm going to make it as entertaining as we can. So if you're easily offended, I dare you to stop listening. I dare you.
Matt's the king.
But
there
there will be, yeah. And if I offend you, good.
Trust me, he means it.
I'm happy that maybe you'll think for yourself now. If I offend you and you think for yourself, mission accomplished. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to move gingerly along. Today we're going to talk about schizophrenia and CBD and cannabis. And this is a big old rabbit hole for a lot of different reasons, primarily because there is a ton of studies out there, and all the studies are inconclusive for the most part, in that they go both directions, which was really daunting when I did the research. But then it really made me think, wow, what an opportunity to gauge critical thinking and independent thought. So again, independent thought meter is going to be on like 9, 10. So if you hear some free thinking here, don't freak out. Think for yourself. You can do it. I believe in you. So let's dive right in on what schizophrenia, first of all, super broad. And I personally am not a big fan of diagnosis of mental illness. And here's why. Because the medical society started diagnosis for treatment. And if you have a physical symptom, it's very easy to compile those symptoms and draw a conclusion on a diagnosis. Your arm hurts. It bends in the way it shouldn't. You have extreme pain. Oh, well, you have a broken arm, right? That broken arm is treated with a cast,
right?
Certain medications, things like that. When it comes to a mental illness actually deals primarily with the way an individual interfaces with their reality. Reality is constructed essentially begins at birth, where you utilize your senses to create a sense of self and the society that surrounds you, or societies that surround you, and what we know of as the world. Okay. So when you have an illness of the mental variety, you're struggling to interface with your reality that you have created. And that is very individualistic. So every person, while there are characteristics that we see because people experience similar circumstances, ultimately everyone's individual experience is very unique. In that we all interpret our reality, our construct, individually.
We all grew up differently too. There may be similarities, but we all grew up differently. Even siblings in the same household.
Twins.
Yeah. can have two different experiences and two different remembrances of how things happened.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the way you interface with your reality is very individualistic, and to try to diagnose a condition and just simply blanket that condition is very difficult and almost a misnomer. So it's very difficult for psychiatrists and psychiatrists to work within that. There are a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists that are kind of abandoning the diagnosis.
There you go. You got the word right that time.
Oh, did I say it wrong?
You said psychiatrist twice. I'm just kidding. Oh. That was funny.
Well, clearly, I need one. Sorry.
Sorry, I had to point that out.
Yeah, I'm not right. Anyway, moving on. So it's very difficult to just simply say, oh, well, you have X, or you have Y, you have Z. And they're pigeonholed into that because they want to find a subscribed method of overcoming that illness. And like any other doctor, which we've covered in other podcasts, there's good ones and there's bad ones. There's one that simply want to prescribe a cocktail of medications for you. There's other ones that want to help you work through that. There's the combinations, et cetera, et cetera. So when you're dealing with schizophrenia specifically, it is very loosely defined. And really, the medical definition is an individual who cannot separate reality from fantasy, which is a pretty accurate description of schizophrenia. If you've had anyone in your life who is schizophrenic, which I have, it is incredibly disturbing. It is probably one of the most unfortunate mental illnesses that I've ever been subjected to. And it is derived from a multitude of circumstances and scenarios. And people can have one schizophrenic episode and never have it again in their life. People can have a schizophrenic episode and never have it end. Mm-hmm. And what brings about schizophrenic episodes is all over the map. It's almost like these studies, and I'm not going to dive too deeply into the medical research in this podcast. I did include a bunch of medical studies in the show notes, and if you're interested in a lot of the deep dive stuff, I would encourage you to research them because it is very interesting. But we're going to keep this like 5,000 feet, right? So loosely, it is believed that schizophrenia can be a genetic disorder. It can also be derived from social experience, being mostly in the form of abuse and mostly and trauma, and mostly during childhood. And it can be a combination of that. If you're predisposed and you experience trauma, obviously you have a higher rate, or you can have no genetic predisposition and experience trauma, and it's just induced. So long story short, nobody really knows what exactly causes schizophrenia, and in all likelihood, that is most likely just a broad category for a multitude of disorders that are just kind of placed into this category, if that makes sense to everyone.
It does. It makes sense. There was a show. Sybil. Yeah, it was Sybil, wasn't it?
No, actually, Sybil was a multiple personality.
Was it multi-personality? So it wasn't.
And that's a very different disorder.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's actually a common misnomer as well, because a lot of people confuse those two. Now, schizophrenia is where you just simply can't differentiate almost like a dream state from a reality.
Gotcha. Just want to make sure people are on the same page.
Yes. With that. So for example, you would perceive something as being real. That is in fact
instead
not
of
real.
Actual multiple personalities.
Right.
Gotcha.
So
difference.
Yeah.
Even though some of those multiple personalities could have a form of schizophrenia in and of themselves. Ooh, that's really deep.
Yeah. And actually, we won't get into multiple. We can get multiple personality in another one, but it's a very deep rabbit hole.
Well, it's just crazy that our brains are how.
Yeah.
vast, and and the things that our brains can create out of trauma.
Yes. Yes.
So
So here's where it fits into the CBD and cannabis world. Um, there, there is substantial evidence that supports benefit from cannabinol as well as THC, and there is substantial evidence to the contrary. I'm going to try not to get too into the details.
did you find the patent?
The only patent I found was for the Epidiolex, the blah,
That's
blah.
Epidiolex. And that's,
Epidiolex.
no, the patent that our government owns. You didn't find that one? Dang, you should have said something.
I
I
looked
found
all
that
over the
for you.
place. Well, that's okay. We'll be all right without it because there is just tons of stuff.
We'll make sure that we put that patent in the notes.
Right. So here's the deal. If you look for studies that show that cannabis use increases the likelihood or the frequency of schizophrenia, you will find a multitude. If you look for studies that show that cannabis use and CBD reduce schizophrenia, you'll find that as well. And it's really because of a lot of different variables, mostly because the individual's experiences vary. The multitude of issues spawning from schizophrenia are vary, and people's reaction to THC and cannabinol vary as well. So here's what it really breaks down to is studies show children who engage in excessive use of cannabis have an increased likelihood of schizophrenia. Here's the variable with those studies. Children who use an excessive amount of cannabis are doing so to self-medicate.
Right.
So what throws that study kind of out the window is that these children are using an excessive amount of cannabis to attempt to medicate themselves. They're medicating themselves because they have a problem. They have a problem because of predisposition for whatever reason. So to simply say, oh, well, cannabis is the cause of schizophrenia is, according to these studies, not necessarily correct.
No,
because,
really?
Well, because of
Would
the
have never
variables.
guessed that.
Now, that being said, THC specifically is a psychotrope. Psychotropes alter your mind state.
Correct.
If you have a predisposition to schizophrenia and you're subjecting yourself to an altered mind state, the potential for that triggering a episode is high because you're altering your mind state. You're taking a psychotrope to alter your mind state. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, not medical, nothing, cannabis is, specifically THC, is a mood amplifier. Correct. And a psychology amplifier. I'm going to get a little more into that here as we move along.
That is exactly how it has always affected me.
So if you are in a wonderful mind state and you are in a blissful mind state, blissful being the key word here because we're going to dive into the blissful part of it, you will feel wonderful with the appropriate dosage of THC. If you are in a negative mind state and you are having potentially psychological issues, chemical imbalance issues, and you take cannabis, particularly in an excessive or abusive amount, the chances of that exacerbating that issue, very high. Especially,
makes perfect sense.
Especially if it is a developing brain that has not learned cognitive coping skills. Now, on top of that, well, I guess before we get into that, I do want to clarify something because we talk about THC and CBD a lot. And what we don't talk about is the potential for the abuse of THC. I recently had person asked me if THC could be abused, and I almost laughed at it, but then I thought, wow, we don't talk about that. And my opinion is yes, THC can absolutely be abused. You can absolutely take too much THC. You can't overdose on it. But if you are using too much THC, it's a problem. And here's why.
Yeah, but it's not addictive.
It's not addictive, but it's habit forming.
It can be, yes.
Here's why it's habit forming. Because THC mimics a natural chemical in your body called anandamide.
Right.
Did I pronounce that correctly? Mm-hmm. So
I believe so. Don't ask me. I can't pronounce shit.
Well, I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways, but we're going to go with anandamide. Anandamide is ananda is a Sanskrit word that means bliss. So anandamide was identified as the bliss molecule in the brain. It is most what two people is it most prevalent in? Trivia question. And I was surprised. I was legitimately surprised when I found this out.
I would say someone who just had an orgasm, but that's just me.
No, but I like what you're thinking. And I didn't see anything about that, but I'd be interested to see. I think that's more of an endorphin thing.
Oh, okay.
But I like that. I like that. It is actually most prevalent in infants and pregnant women. And here's why. Well, here's what they believe. They believe that anandamide is most prevalent